Wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the 2012 show. I'm your host, Sevan, and we have a jam-packed show today. It's scheduled for 1 hour, and we're going to get into a hyperdimensional career, what that exactly means, and what is the future, as people love to look into. What is the future of humanity, or what comes next? So before I begin, of course, I always do check inside of the chat room to make sure that everyone can hear me loud and clear. And for those that are wondering where that chat box is, if you're on the Blog Talk Radio, there's actually a chat box there that's associated with Esoteric Radio, and you can also type your questions and comments inside of that chat box. In addition, if you would like to call in, you can call in at area code 347-996-5688. So I'm just going to wait for clarification for someone to type in the chat box that they can hear me loud and clear, and then we're going to take off. Okay, Freeman says he can hear everything loud and clear, so we're going to go ahead and start this. Of course, my panel is with me today, Wes and Crystal out of Canada, or our Canadian Resistance, and we're going to hear from them in just a little bit. I wanted to get right into this again because today's show is scheduled for an hour. The hyperdimensional career, what is that? Basically, I've started to really look into a lot of what we're experiencing in the reality, and many people that have been following the work at the Resistance are very aware of how we've been speeding along through much of the knowledge that is available here on the planet. And we've now discovered that it is a fact that our planet is a fractal of the universe. Even our body is a fractal of the universe and contains every single component that the universe actually contains within. We just have to be able to access it. So the same thing is going on with Earth. If you have access to certain states of consciousness, certain frequencies, you can enjoy those frequencies, and many would say that they're far off, meaning that they're in the clouds or distant planets away. But we've discovered that it's right here. You just have to gain access. So that's what the hyperdimensional career is really about, is understanding and understanding how to work on several fronts. Not only the physical front, meaning what you're doing in physical life, but also gaining control of what you're doing in your lucid time, i.e. your dreams, your visions, your meditation, in order to expand your consciousness into the hyperdimensional self that already exists within it. Everyone does have a correspondence or register, a biorhythm, or connection with things that we've not even fully discovered yet in humanity's existence. So we welcome people to get involved in this so that we can expand more of who we are as a species. The first thing I would like to say is about staying out of stagnant guidelines. And this is something that I really want to talk about, because today's show is not so much about just giving information about, current happenings and occult knowledge, etc., but more of a direct talk about things that you should utilize within your spiritual practices in order to get you further. Staying out of stagnant guidelines is the limitations that many people have set on what they can and cannot do are mainly the reasons why they're stuck where they are now, and I'll talk about that. In our reality, we're facing enormous situations that need to be solved, but we of course know that the problem is bolted onto the solution anytime it's presented into a dual plane. But why is it that Earth has such a hard time solving the problems that are presented to it? This is because generally the solution itself has been blocked, demonized, or all out rioted against. Who knows? But there's always a reason why we don't have a solution for our problems. And if we look into our spiritual problem, which to me is really the problem of all problems, meaning that if someone writes down 2 plus 2 and puts an equal sign next to it, that's called a problem. So it needs to be solved. So with spirituality, what we're dealing with is many people are having a hard time even getting the experience, not so much as the reading, because there's plenty of information available out now on the internet from different people who've had the experience themselves and are writing about it, but getting the actual experience themselves. How can we bring that about? And of course, that's what the Resistance is really designed for, is to get you in the know with information about how you can tap into these subtle fields and these other experiences of yourself. So what I would like to do today, actually before I start getting into the bulk of the conversation today, is I would like to look into my switchboard here. I'm going to go ahead and bring on the panel, Wes and Crystal, so that they can say what's up to everyone. And I'm just going to give them a shout out now. Crystal or Wes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, Sevan. How are you today?
Awesome. I'm doing exceptionally well. As we spoke earlier, today is a really, really clear day. A lot of people are experiencing really good weather, so it's just time to translate that to everyone else.
Definitely, yeah. A lot of really good information is coming through. We're doing really well here, just keeping it cyclic. And, yeah, we have quite a few questions here today. And I actually wanted to say, too, for any new members on the site that may be listening today, you can get your questions answered on the 2012 show on the blog post on the home page. We have the Questions on the Quest post there. So you can post any questions you may have, and we will answer them on the 2012 show. So if you want to do it, Sevan, let's just get it rolling.
I see no other reason why not. Some of these questions, it takes, quite a little bit of time to get it clear, so we might as well start early. And, of course, as we continuously answer these questions, we'll discuss more of how the hyperdimensional career ties into much of this.
Definitely, for sure. We have quite a few questions from our member named C, but we'll start with the first one. And they ask, are all meteorites helpful to have around, or can they be detrimental? Well, I have a little bit to say on that. And firstly, I know a lot about moldavite. That's the kind of opaque green stone. It has a lot of intense frequency to it and a really high vibration. So those kinds of stones are very powerful for transformation. Actually, they're called tektites because, they're the result of what happened from a meteor. So as it's known, that stone is really kind of like the holy grail stone per se. It's really a good stone to use for like psychic protection, and negative entities often find it really difficult to kind of connect to your aura when you are wearing it. So it's kind of like their kryptonite. It's even the same color. Wearing this stone is really to your advantage when you're working with spirit. So, you can be sure that what you're making contact with is of the light and of the highest good. But one of its best assets is just that it's a protective stone, and it can really harness and develop your psychic abilities. So using the stone in your meditation is really powerful. Like you can, use it in conjunction with other stones as well, and those crystals will really amplify a great deal more with the moldavite. I know it's found in Czechoslovakia. I think that was the site of where the meteor hit, and I think it's about 15 million years old, those tektites. So, yeah, they have high vibration. They're really powerful. If you're looking to make a lot of change in your life, then you can expect that with moldavite because it kind of just kicks things into high gear. If you're somebody who may not be ready for it, you can, it is kind of an adept stone, I would say. So moldavite is what I know about. There's also something called Libyan desert glass, I think, and it's kind of like a yellow gold tektite. And those can bring on a lot of really good manifestation. So, using that one too also works as a psychic shield, and it also carries a very high resonance. Whether or not it's an official tektite is unknown, but I know that the area that it's located is in between Egypt and Libya, and that those tektites there are somewhat like 28 million years old, so really quite ancient for sure. And then there's something called a Sakote, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Sakote Alin, which is an iron meteorite that landed in Siberia, I think, and it was like an iron meteorite, and apparently it was like one of the greatest meteorite showers in modern history. I think it happened in 1947, and there was like something like 23,000 kilograms of space that fell that morning, and apparently it left such a big cloud that people could see it for miles away, like 100 miles away or something like that. And the crater, I think, was like 20 feet deep and 85 feet across, so, it blasted fragments everywhere. So yeah, like using any of those would be really good. I know you can buy them online. But yeah, I mean, Sevan, I know you've had some experience with moldavite yourself.
For sure. In many of the tektite crystals, I guess the the thing about crystals, people have to understand, because even the meteorites, once they come into our atmosphere, the heat and the pressure turns it into a glass, and of course glass is crystal, and that's the form that we get it in. And it's very interesting because my first pursuit of meteorites was just to connect with energies that were foreign to the planet, just in assuming that those energies come from space so that they have no direct connection to what's going on here on the planet. But of course I was wrong about that. What I discovered is that, first of all, just with using crystals, people have to understand that crystals amplify. They are elementals within themselves that amplify the energies that they're spec'd to. So if they're generally spec'd by their color. Like the color green itself is associated with healing, prosperity, and abundance. So the meteorite has a lot to do with that, the one that we're talking about in particular, which is moldavite. However, it's also, there's an antithesis, meaning that when you look at anything in its opposite spectrum, it's in the exact opposite color. And this is how we have to understand how the dual planes really work. So there's, of course, another component to moldavite, which is in the exact opposite color, and it equals exactly opposite to what it does on a positive level. And this is why there's also negative people that understand how to use crystals for different things also, because they tap into the opposite energy of the crystal. So it's important for us to look deeper into the crystals as being amplifiers, because if we are carrying very negative, low energy, and then we use these crystals, it's only going to amplify and then channel that energy. So we have to be careful of that. In addition, everything is still a part of us. So what I've discovered is that many of these energies are foreign, but really dormant or rare. And the thing about dormant or rare energies is you have to ask yourself two questions. In many cases, I'll say on a positive note, things that are very rare are very, how can I put it? If something is very rare, it doesn't have to, it's sometimes a positive thing, and then in other cases it could be a negative thing. If something is dormant, that may mean because it came out of balance. If it's not used on the planet anymore, or if it's not really, people don't know about it very much, you have to just dig deeper into why is it that there's not much of it. And be ready to do some repairs in integration also, meaning that sometimes we contact energies that are very foreign to our environment and don't understand our environment and have to go through the process of understanding that environment through us. So we have to realize that when we do get involved with these kind of elements and essences, that they are sentient, and we have this responsibility of showing them how to behave basically in this reality by example. And then how they do that, of course, is however we're acting, however we're behaving, that's magnified. And then the crystal begins to learn the energy and how the energy is channeled through us. And so this is, I guess, as much as I have to say in regards to that, but just looking a lot deeper into what our relationship is to crystals, their sentience, where exactly they're from, rare crystals, and why they became rare, and just understanding how we're here in a career. We have work to do, and that in many cases means correcting some of the energies to understand exactly what their purpose is in this reality.
Right, because all of the crystals can be programmed to how you want them to react. Like you said, they're sentient, so we interact with them any way that we want to. So, yeah, depending where you are on the coin, if you want to use them in a positive way, they can also be used in a negative way. So you have to be really clear about, how you want to utilize them, because they really are one of our greatest allies, and they're so helpful in crystal meditations and things like that. So learning about each one of them and what they do takes it to a certain point, but then you can kind of carry that over and use it to your greatest of abilities for sure.
Sure.
There was a second part of that question too that C said, is it possible to find out if you're living on a ley line and to find out how it's affecting you? Well, I would say that looking into various methods of dowsing would be helpful. I know that you can use like a pendulum, or there's these kind of special rods that dowsers use that can show energy vortices. I know, Sevan, when you moved to Costa Rica, you went into San Jose there, and you found like a monument over top of a ley line right in the middle of the city. So, like, often those big monolithic monuments are placed over top of these strong energy points on the Earth, right?
Exactly. If you were looking, a lot of times there's a way, of course, dowsing is the premium way. It takes a little technique to be a dowser. You really have to be good at keeping your body into a calm state and just basically one constant frequency so that you can notice the differences when you're over a ley line. But the easiest way to do it visually is to look at, even if you're in the jungle, you can see where the ley line is. In many cases, especially where the vortex is, you'll see an abnormal tree growth, even a spiraling tree growth. And in certain areas, it'll be more greener. That's how you can generally tell. Or certain trees will be lined up over it. And then, of course, in the cities, you'll see monument structures and different things that have been built by the Masons that will be right on the ley line. What I've always been hoping to one day have fall into my hands is that there is a book that I've heard that is passed around amongst the depths that deal with ley lines, and it gives them basically the ley line map of the entire world, because it is a redundant grid system, but it is very specific to geometry that is very similar to exactly how the pyramid is put together. If you pull one piece of stone out of the pyramid, you'll notice that there will be no other stone in the pyramid that is shaped like that. So this lets you know that whoever built the pyramids put all of the mathematics together first, then cut the stone with laser or shamir, which is why the pieces fit together so closely, and then had the levitated or whatever they did to put them into place. And so this can also be seen with what we're exactly talking about. You can see how there's with the ley line system, the way that it connects. And you can't just say, well, it'll always be one right here. You really have to understand the entire pattern to understand where the next one's going to be if you're using that kind of method. So hopefully...
they've compared those ley lines to kind of like acupuncture meridians of the human body on the Earth, right?
And we've seen some grids such as the Becker-Hagen's grid, but it just shows you that the patterns are not... Like some people lay the dodecahedron over Earth and then make the points as the major meridian lines, and that's not correct because the Earth is not a straight line, so you can't lay a straight line pattern over Earth and expect for every point to connect. What you have to do is you have to curve the straight line, and then you can see where the points connect.
Right. So are they fixed, or can they change, like with things like pole shifts and things like that?
So my understanding that, different points can be developed all the time just as new people are born. And you see there's a constant layering to our reality. We do talk about the cyclic nature, but again, as I talked about on the last show, it's more of a coil. So each time the coil goes around for another run, it either gets stronger or weaker, but it's not going to stay in the same state. So what happens is oftentimes when the coil is increasing, there's more points that are added within the system itself. And so it's pretty much changing all the time with new stuff being added. But the core points are always there as more or less beacons for the energy.
I see. Okay. The third part of Steve's question is, what are some effective ways to get past the religious brainwash ego in order to share insightful facts? And I'm going to let you take that one full bore.
Okay. Definitely what we were talking about in the beginning of the show, just staying out of the stagnant guidelines, because that is really what the control point is with the religions, is basically to tell a person in the end that you even pursuing technology, pursuing psychedelics, pursuing other knowledge outside of their spiritual books, pursuing pretty much anything you can't do. And so this is where that whole stagnancy of religion takes place. And so it's also reaffirming that to yourself and reassuring yourself that understanding that most of the guidelines that are within the religions, except for what's obvious, like I think the Ten Commandments, which is Hammurabi's code, is obvious. You shouldn't really kill people. You shouldn't really steal. I don't think it takes a God, except for the God that's in you, to keep telling you that over and over again and tell you that there's going to be bad results or hell-like results if you do these kind of things. You shouldn't cheat on your wife, etc. So these type of childlike Ten Commandments that people are given show what level of maturity that they're on. If they need to go by those, they have to constantly be reminded or reminding themselves that God doesn't want them to steal. So that's the reason why that they won't steal today. You see what I mean? We have to get way beyond that. And that's the other thing. Way beyond that is where humanity, or in the particular, the person, can go into higher states of consciousness because they're available here on the planet that we're calling Earth. People, I really want to tell people to understand that our Earth is so big that for anyone to say that they've seen every single part of Earth, that has to be a very, very developed human with several spiritual components, because there's the inside of Earth, and there's, of course, the outside of Earth with all these different locations that most people have never been to that are still in very high frequencies. And if you were in those places, you would feel like you had crossed into a higher frequency. So what this makes it is that, remember, living is your responsibility. So as a human being that is living on this planet, you have to begin to work towards releasing yourself from entities, societies, cultures, etc., that say you cannot go over there. You cannot do this. And how you remove yourself from that is you do it really from the bottom up. You start working with the smallest areas even to unloosen the grip that these stagnant shells have on you. If you really think about it, look at the MMS. It's, again, I think $20 now, $5 to $20, depending on who you order it from, and it begins to loosen the grip by giving you a higher alkaline level, etc., and then more positive things start to happen in your life. Then that starts to loosen the grip of possible financial situations, etc., and then you can take a trip. And then that starts to loosen the grip of you just staying in one place and being a fixed star, for better lack of words. If you look at the trees have no choice in certain essences on the physical reality but to stay right there. But because we can move, we have to look at even just the gift in that we're not in jail in the sense that you only can move right out to the front of your jail cell door, but we're in a state where we can even go and walk 20, 30 miles, 50 miles into other areas to find the release. And that's what I keep saying now to people, is that it's now looking to me that the programming is what's keeping people inside the cage, not that the door itself is not open and has not already been flung open. So I would definitely say, just in getting rid of some of those religious stagnancies, and when it starts to attack your mind with whatever you're reading, whatever you're doing, is still to just kind of level with yourself of, what is this going to ultimately do for me? Is this, which one is going to project me forward, and which one's going to keep me in the same place that I'm in now?
Right, but the important part is just to make some steps to kind of just loosen that grip up initially, and then, once you make one, you can make another, and the whole point is just to keep moving forward and not stay in the same place.
Right, and then also seeing the religion itself as a ladder, more so than something that you're going to be leaving behind. Like, the reality is that when you go through the spiritual system and you're really devout, whether it's Christianity or Islam, etc., when you climb above that, you have not left it. You've simply taken it with you. It's almost like you have now that experience in your pack, or in your backpack, and now you're going to the next level with it. You will be able to find things that you could utilize that you've learned from those systems as you climb higher up on the ladder, but you'll also get very clear on the things that are not allowing you to climb up the ladder, or even not allowing you to climb back down the ladder. We should not want to remain fixed in any state.
Right, for sure. So just to use the information that you've learned and transmute it, because, obviously everything that we go through on our journey has some kind of application somewhere.
Right. It has also a lot of application to friends and family that we know that are still involved in that. When we do have those conversations with them, even though we think they're not listening, when we do reflect back into the same scriptures, texts, surahs, ayads, or whatever we're reflecting on, they resonate with that for that moment. And then when we introduce the alternative to them, then they just sit and think about it. But if you're not able to get back into a person's frequency or plane for whatever reason, then that becomes our fault as teachers. So we get a chance to see the Christianity, see the Islam, etc., as an instruction, but then also how to instruct those that are still within it, what lies beyond it.
Well, like you say, there's always a solution to every problem. It just needs to be searched out a little bit.
For sure.
Okay, well, the second to last question that C has for us is, what is an effective way to help channel sexual energy for a more productive use? Okay, well, I would say that those Mantak Chai books, that are available in the library, like we've talked about several times. There's a couple. There's the first one called the Healing Energy Through the Tao, I believe it's called. Start with that one, because that one gets you really acclimated with utilizing the multi-cosmic orbit. And that's kind of foundation for the next book. There's two. There's one for males and one for females. The male one is called The Multi-Orgasmic Man, and then the female one is called Cultivating the Female Sexual Energy. So yeah, those would be a really good place to start. I know that we've talked extensively, Sevan, about the Kundalini and its relationship to chi building and those sexual cultivation practices. I can't remember how many shows ago that was. Is it like 4 or 5?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that, because those are the best shows to really tune into in regards to that particular topic. I don't think it could be explained any better, because, of course, we have to get into how we see the female, and how the male sees the female, and how the female sees the male. And then in addition to that, one has to get very clear also what if they're saying that I've built up a lot of sexual energy or Kundalini energy, being very sure that that is exactly what's happened, because generally a person who does that does also know what to do next from the level that you feel this pranic, very orgasmic, which sometimes is confused as sexual energy, because sexual energy is very close to it. But this energy has a very, very high ability in healing the environment. So what you do is you would just sit somewhere and radiate that energy. And like we talked about before, the Occupy Wall Street people have to yell out what they want and have the picket signs, etc. But if they just sat there and said nothing, it would be far more disturbing to the police and to the people in the office buildings that they did that. So we see that just because if you have tapped into Kundalini and pranic energy, if I'm telling you to sit and radiate, doesn't mean that you're going to be on timeout. Because if you've already activated those energies, then you've seen what it can do. So the real goal to utilizing that energy better is to go into many of these quote unquote lower frequency areas, like into a park or somewhere, some place where you've already identified where the ley line or charging station is, and get in the vicinity of that and begin to transmute that like the orgone does. Also still keeping in mind, though, when you do this, because this is still more or less adept work, when you do this, you have to understand how to convert that negative energy also back into either neutral energy, as the orgone does, or even positive energy, as a human can do, because you can feel so good after you do it because you know that it's been done. It's almost like, okay, well, I've taken care of that negative energy that is in that park area where a lot of the drug dealers and things hang out. So that's really also what the hyperdimensional career is about, is because I didn't say it was just in the non-physical realities you were going to have a hyperdimensional job. In this physical reality, we have many things to do that we use hyperdimensional techniques in those instances. So, yeah, I mean, it's just once you know that pranic energy is built up. Now, I will also lend more information into that. There are stages to this. So, of course, in the beginning, you're really working on just getting the energy as a male into the Dantian chakra, into the stomach area. But there's also there's different levels. So never think that you've actually obtained the high level of it, even if you go into a state of fauna, because there are chemicals, there's a chemical reaction within the body that actually activates a great deal of our altered states of consciousness. And we used to know how to activate those things within our DNA or whatever you want to call it, but we used to know how to think that activation into process. Like, if you wanted to fly, there's a chemical reaction to that. Trust me. Even levitation, there's a chemical reaction to that. We used to know how to make that chemical reaction take place within our body through thought. It's almost like this, making yourself lighter, etc., or making yourself impenetrable to heat, etc., which we've seen many people be able to display. So this is where we get into now. We have this tug of war going on between those that are in alchemy, or more can be those who understand how to replace these chemicals back into the body, at least for a moment, such as DMT, ayahuasca, etc., versus those who think that we should never introduce such substance into our body, and thus we're kind of like sitting here still on the rock waiting for something to return. So what I will say is that these chemical reactions that cause the opening of the third eye, the high levels of energizing within the body to radiate certain kinds of pranic levels of energy have been discovered even down to the molecule and reproduce. They're very simple. Like if you look at the chemical structure in the DMT, it's very simple, but there's other ones. And the chemical structures within them are very simple, meaning that we would get more in a tub of what do you call that stuff? Cream cheese. You would get more chemicals in a tub of cream cheese than the single chemical DMT. So just from the level of common sense, it's obvious that the DMT is not, it should not be demonized more than cream cheese. You see what I mean? So what's happening to us is that, like I said, there's this body of knowledge that talks about and explains how to mix up these chemicals properly. The indigenous knew a lot. The indigenous before the generation was cut off. I will say that because you have to remember when the Catholics and the missionaries got involved with the indigenous tribes, they cut them off a generation from their knowledge. And that probably is the credits to why a great deal of their recipes that they use for healing may not work now, meaning that if you go into the jungle and let's say you catch a nasty cold or malaria or something, and there used to be a remedy for that, and they'll mix up a couple trees and then they'll give it to you, and then you'll find you still have the problem, and it's because not all of what was used is there. It's been lost and forgotten in the tense where the generation was cut off. During when the Catholic Crusades all around the world with the missionaries changing everyone's religion. So not to just get off topic here, I think we kind of got off topic enough, but it is for us to start to repair these things. Like I'm citing a lot of the situations or the main situations that are taking place that's keeping the entire thing from powering up. We, once again, want this 100th monkey syndrome to happen with the activated human in order for it to correct the problems that so far have been proven to not have any solutions. Meaning that what the 100th monkey syndrome says is that there is a wave that is sent across to those other monkeys that lets them know, hey, this is what you should do to open up those nuts better. So what we're talking about is that that wave is obviously some type of photon or some type of something that can correct whatever a cellular problem may be. And so the cellular problem in the monkey's case is lacking the knowledge of not being able to understand how to open the coconut, for those who are familiar with the 100 monkey experiment.
Well, you know what, Sevan, they actually did a little experiment too in the UK. They put a bunch of people in a room and they showed them this like picture that had like 100 or more faces in it, but obviously you could only see about like 6 or 7 really without actually being shown where the other ones were. It was kind of like a 3D magic picture, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And so then they took another group of people in another area of the globe, and they pointed out where all the faces were, all 150 of them. And then they redid the test again with the people back in the UK, and then all of a sudden those same people could see all the faces. So it was like a total collective wave of consciousness where they just got it. You know, it was funny because it was like the other day I ran into somebody, I was just a perfect stranger who was walking by with their son. And their son was a little bit older than my daughter, Brooke, and was already walking. And I said to him, I was like, oh, I'm going to be there soon. And he's just like, yeah, you know, for sure. He's like, does she get any time around other babies? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I actually don't have any other friends that I know that have young kids. And he's like, oh, man, we took our son to a few play dates at the park, and then he just saw other kids walk. And then, like, 5-6 days later, he was walking. So this goes to show you that, you know, we learn inherently that way. You know, it's a higher power that's going on that allows us to do that.
For sure, and in many cases, that higher power is us. I mean, just in understanding how to connect with it. I mean, I do have a question here in the chat box that I did want to address. The individual does seem like they need this question answered. The question is basically, I feel so stuck, I can't get out, I'm homeless. I think it says I need a job and my boss owes me $5,000. How do I change this energy? Now, what we do need to really start being aware of is that there is no genie in the bottle effect that you really want with your spiritual progress, meaning that it's for everyone the ground up. Anything that becomes like a temporary or a very fast fix for a situation sometimes is very temporary before the situation returns again. What you have to do is you have to begin to work really with the area that you know that you can start to work with most. And in most cases, the person has no money and they're homeless and they're maybe 2 or 3 days from getting kicked out. In our life and in our world, it requires us to go and do something physically immediately that is going to really fix that situation. So because for that situation to get to that level, it's now been several stages of not being seen. We can say whether it's our fault or whether it's not our fault, etc., but we can go back and forth with that all day. The reality is that life really functions more like chess. You can see things that are going to occur several moves ahead. And if at any point you don't attempt to adjust yourself to situations that are going to occur in the future, then as we see in life, then we have to deal with the results of that. The ambition levels of humanity has been extremely low, especially because of the radiation levels. Everyone has to understand, well, why is it that if I feel this lack of energy and I feel this lack to push, where does that come from? And it comes a lot from the radiation. To fix these situations, you have biochemical cell salts. The biochemical cell salts are the real alchemy of the body. There is a way to mix up very simple cocktail, for better lack of words, for yourself that keeps you in premium state because of realizing what your ailments are. And so I'm still not done answering this question. I think the person's name is Sun T. Where your ailments are. First of all, you have to identify what is causing this, what has been causing this misfortune in life, what is giving you the lower frequency. Sometimes it's family ties. Sometimes it's spiritual ties. You have to look into where are the ties, the people that you're affiliated with. Sometimes wife. These type of situations all have to be looked into in order for you to come up with a solution, not to run out on any of these situations before they get solved, but to actually come up with the solution itself by utilizing the knowledge that has been presented. But what's first necessary is for you to identify where are you leaking energy the most. Is it in your health? Is it in the amount of time that you have? Is it in your residency? You have to find that control point. And then when you find that control point where the energy is leaking, then that's the question you ask. You ask let's say, for instance, it's a question about health. Well, yes, I've had this ailment all of my life, and it's this. And this, I believe, is taking a lot of energy out of me. Is there solutions for this? And that allows us to help you a lot better. It allows us to be able to go right to it because this is also what's now needed. There's no quick fix for humanity's situation or a fix that will work for everyone. We will find ourselves step by step by step, especially within soul group to soul group to soul group, working with different kinds of human beings that have certain specific problems that need to be dealt with. And this is why when you become this hyperdimensional being, you have more feelers that you can actually assist the individual with, meaning that some of us try to plug in to individuals to assist them, but we short circuit, meaning that we find that we cannot do anything for them or that they agitate us, etc. This is because you have to still go out further and learn how to have more experience with different things in order for you to have an overall respect for not only what you're doing, but also what the universe is doing for you by giving you the opportunity to work with other people. A lot of us have been caught in this selfish, stagnant energy where we don't give anything. We've never given anything that we felt like was important to us, and we only gave it away when we didn't want it anymore, when it had no longer any use to us. So this type of behavior, which has been taught by the same systems, same religions, demigods, archons that have been stuck in their stagnant positions too, that type of stuff that has to be removed. So what we're saying is that there is a wedge that was already made within your aura in order to take you off balance. We now have to identify where that wedge is, where that hole is and begin to patch it up, to soothe it, and to get it working again. If you want to really look at it from a different level, each human being is very similar to a clock that is missing pieces, thus the clock is not on time. So you have to understand how to go in and to heal pieces, build pieces, place pieces even inside of people. I've been around people that have an ability, and they said the ability came to them, and it looks like a gene. And they are capable of seeing it very clearly, and then they make it go inside of the person that's sick, even if they don't know that they're sick, because the gene can tell who is sick, and it heals them. So what I'm saying is that because babies are being born every day, and children are turning 13, 14 every day, there's a whole wave of things that's always happening. It always requires attention on each level that someone has to give it. And we've, in many cases in our adolescence, pushed this responsibility onto gods and to higher beings, etc. But now when you become adept, you take that responsibility. And that's the other difference between having a religion and then not having a religion. When you don't have a religion anymore, then the responsibility is yours. A religion requires it to be someone else's responsibility, i.e. Jesus to die for your sins so that you can then get into heaven, etc. So this is where we're at. And so we have to be also willing to take ourselves from where we're at. Like, I see so many people that imagine what they want Earth to be, and they live there in their mind. And then they get mad that the reality is not metamorphosizing into what they want reality to be. But when you really get into reality, and then it becomes actuality, you don't really want it to be anything. You understand what it is, and you immediately go into work. You see what I mean? It's like, you know that the only change that's going to come about is the change that you create within it, and that's really how you want it to be. So, like I said, let us find this point where we're leaking energy, then bring that as the problem. Then we will solve it, and then you'll see the release within whatever is holding you. You will start to build up and generate energy. Then because all of this stuff obeys you. That's why I said if you work inside, you can control everything outside of you. Work inside first. So this is how you get to it. And of course, if you're in dire situations, it has to be done fast because it's no time to play.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, a person tends to often, when they have misfortune come upon them, they tend to constrict in every sense of the word with their energy, and I guess that's symbolic of, having to go inside and really sit with oneself and figure out where these issues are. And then, once you've done that, you've transmuted that issue, and like you said, you've removed that wedge, then you can expand again, and then, put your energy forward to put it more into a cyclic nature again.
Exactly. And you know what? There's so much deeper knowledge about this wedge. It actually looks like a cone, and it's stuck, and they stick it into the aura, and it's on the other side of it looks like basically a funnel open. And then your energy is just pouring out of that. And, this is big time for humanity because just understanding that has been happening allows you to be able to fix it. And then you can easily see, because your mind, body, and soul already know it's been telling you. But you just need the rest of the pieces to make it all make sense. But it's always been telling you, this is where the wedge is. What are we going to end up doing with the situation? No matter what, the situation is going to end up taking us down. Now it's time to, instead of you solving it, and that's why what the Do It For My Friend thing is really, really has to be tapped back into by people to understand then how to go into stuff that you always been knowing is your problem, but you haven't had the ability to brave or even know what was necessary to remove the situation. And it's because you keep going in for yourself. Because you're not imagining yourself anymore of what you would be when that's gone. You're only imagining yourself now when it's there. This is a big-time manifestation technique. Just starting to realize and be able to manifest and project where you will be once one particular thing is moved out of the way. Just don't overdo it at first. It's like, don't use your faculty to the extent where it doesn't, that is beyond what you understand how to do with it. Just focus on one thing, like cloud bursting, and burst it. I believe the original idea, again, of cloud bursting is a cloud, our clouds in the sky are our thoughts, our ideas, our ethereal things moving like the wind, either into the direction of happening or into the direction of dissipation. So we have these, when we utilize, just again, not to get again, I'm now way off the topic, but just to utilize these techniques and these principles, these visualizations, starts to allow you to cloud bursts, or basically move out the ideas that are just ideas, and start getting out of idea land. See, just because the surface is not habitable for many, they live in the clouds. Let's talk about that on a deeper level. Because there's turmoil on the earth, there's things going on, economy, whatever, a lot of people have chosen, you know what, I'm just going to go beyond this, and I'm going to think higher. And so they live in the clouds. And there, if you looked in the sky, if you understood how many particles and how many essences and energies, you would actually see your thought and where it lives and how you live inside of it up there. So now what we're encouraging people to do is to burst those clouds, let it rain down. Like when you burst a cloud, there's particles that then rain down. They're the seeds back into Earth, because now Earth's fertile. It's fertile season. It's March. The entire principles of even skull and bones is based on March. And it's not something that is exclusive to them. They just understand that they do what they want to do during March, and then all of the seeds that they drop will come to fruition by the end of the year. And so if you watch different changes with the United States, different things that have happened, especially with the Bush situation, Gulf oil in Afghanistan, you look at March and March is lit up. Why? Because they're dealing with a particular kind of energy. You need to go beyond this now and say, why? This is now people have pretty much become the Illuminati as much as information that they read about the Illuminati. They know more than the Illuminati knows. Like on the Dr. Parnassus Imaginarium, the devil says, when you get the full details on the voodoo stuff, you let me know. He said that to the other guy. As if the voodoo has become so complicated by people, the devil doesn't even understand what people are doing anymore. So we have to understand how to take our creative minds and push it into the directions that we've already been shown will produce results. One of the main directions is definitely our children. Like the children produce, they are the seeds of us. So while everyone's lollygagging and still trying to figure out how to fix their self, I think we should probably take a time out on ourselves and do it for our children, our friend, whatever you want to call it, is do it for our children and put the energy back into them. If you cannot remove the stigmas and the problems with yourself for whatever reason, do not let your child inherit it. Do not give it to your child so that it also has to continuously carry this foolish, mentally embedded projection of reality. Let it be free and then see where it goes and learn from it. Meaning that if we could already go back to our highest state anyway if everything was wiped out except for us, because all we would then do is watch what the children do. And then the child would go back up activated. See, the problem with humanity now is that they don't even understand that they can activate. And, of course, the baby is activated to a certain degree, but doesn't have any clue of how to drive it any more than if you sit a baby inside of a Bugatti or a BMW. The baby doesn't know how to drive it. So it has the energy potential. The glands are brand new and ready, but it has no instruction. And this is why I believe personally that when you had the man, the woman, and the child, that this makes this triangulation. And within these three, that even it seems like the woman and the man could focus energy into the baby, just basically focus the idea itself into the baby, and then the baby's facilities, which are still new, project the reality itself. See, we're way off in the systems that we've been using now and what's been introduced, but we cannot live in a state where we will not accept that and start to grow further. Meaning that let's just accept we've been living in a black hole. It's the Kali Yuga thing, a dark age with knowledge. But now it's over, and this is why this kind of knowledge is coming out, because I'm still looking for somebody who's talking this. I'm finding a couple people like Mr. Ellis Taylor on the Esoteric alphabet, and individuals like the gentleman who did What's in Plain Sight. I'm finding some key individuals that are around that have done great work in their areas. Overall, however, I'm still looking for those who have actually truly, not just because they drove themselves crazy through a drug or through a psychedelic or something like that, but have truly touched the high states of conscious Erebah and then have come down to earth again and actually are fully cohesive about what they need to do here. So this is something that humanity, again, is being given the opportunity, just like we've been given so many different kinds of opportunities. Even knowing that the DMTs or something like that is here, a lifetime is lived by many people and they never experience such things. No matter what happens to me in this life, I can just say from my first DMT experience and first ayahuasca experience that, yeah, I got the t-shirt of Earth. I pretty much maxed out what most people were available to do. Now, because I'm telling people also, do not confuse the ayahuascas and the DMTs with your petty acids and LSDs, these kinds of levels of psychedelic. This is, if you understand chemistry, and this is why in the American world we have a problem with rolling everything together. But if you understand chemistry, these substances go in an entirely different category. And like I said, are more simple than cream cheese. And so humanity, again, unlocking this knowledge, being brave enough to apply it, or if choosing not to apply it, not holding anyone else back, especially our children back from it, and then just allowing the reality to make its metamorphosis and its correction like it will anyway. And that's what I really feel about this. No matter what I'm saying, no matter who it's affecting, I still understand it from an entirely different level, that this is something that is going to happen for humanity anyway. All I am is simply an agent to push that forward, meaning that we are all stewards here of the universe. We can either choose to hang up our tools and sit back and chew on some buckwheat, or we can till this field and then let the crop come forth and then continuously nourish ourselves and the crop as we keep this cyclic thing, this coil thing going, so we can figure out more of what is really happening in the big stages of things. Because here we are in sentience with such a clear vision of what the potential is of what we can become. Let's not allow that to become clouded by all of these past things that we keep wanting to bring back into our new self. And this is important. Like, let's not allow these past things to come and keep affecting our future and holding us back and dragging us down.
Wow, Sevan, well, you definitely answer that above and beyond, for sure. C has one more final question. I don't know if we can get through it in 8 minutes, but we'll try. Are humans meant to be polygamous or monogamous?
I think anyone actually thinking about that needs to be monogamous. I've started to really realize that, again, there is this whole level of love and attention that we have to give anything that we start to really interact with that's sentient. So to think that we could do that with more than one at the level that we're on now, I think would be a little bit incorrect, meaning that I don't think that the man or the woman is in a position, because there's polygamy that still works even with women. There's one that works with men also, but let's just say the case with men, I think that we have so much that we've figured out now that we don't know, that we would really need to start working on that. And it would take so much energy that if we actually think that we can manage perfectly 2 females, when we have yet to still figure out how we can manage 1 female perfectly, I think that, again, I believe the immaturity of our race and species. Now, in the ancient days, like I talked about on another show, the sheer mathematics behind Saqqara, the pyramids, many of the temples that are underneath Japan, the sheer mathematics within that lets you understand that this previous man, Va, now I've even now tracked down the name, the previous man, which I guess Nephilim, Rephilim, whatever you want to call him, Va, was more than capable of handling more than one woman, but had an entirely different problem to deal with. So this is why you see polygamy within the old races, is because that is really the kickoff of this entire thing, was the fertilization that came from the Va, the sons that came from Venus. Now, anyone deep in the occult and that says these things are not supposed to be said and never talked about, they're shuddering right now because they know that this becomes the key point to much of this. Now, if you look at the pentagram itself, it's a series of V's. So you understand that it is a V-based agenda. Whether it's positive or negative, I don't think even comes to play. It's more vast. There's a whole story here. So these suns that came into physicality came from the light of Venus. So there was basically more than one Lucifer from that text. Lucifer just means basically the light. So there was more than one light that descended into the sphere. And so this is so in conclusion, what I'll say just on the topic of polygamy is I think that we have these things that we need to be concerned about that are more valuable than us just trying to accumulate other fleshly property, meaning that other people that are around you to do fleshly deeds with, which that's as much as you could really accomplish out of that. Now, if you have people that are all in one community environment, happens to be one male and 8 females, but he's not sharing sexual relationships with all of those females, then that's one thing. But if it's like some type of harem, like we were talking about, and there's a polygamistic situation or polygamy situation going on there, I just think it's premature and basically really silly to be doing right now, since the last memo came in about what humanity is experiencing on this planet, male and female. But does that make sense? I mean, did I say that at least clear enough?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I'm just trying to think of it like on a deeper level, like, you know, like, the schism, like why somebody would want to give their energy to multiple people. It's kind of like a fractal of how we've become as a society, needing to accumulate more and more. And yeah, like, I mean, you know, it's
right, the whole collector behavior. But what I will say though is that there's a time and a place for everything. Like, polygamy exists in the wild, so it doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place. I just think humanity is in a stage right now where it has to start to function on other things, and because that takes up a large part of our time, I think we should, since we're still linear in some senses, we should start thinking about how we're spending our time and who we're spending our time with. You know, spend some good time with yourself, especially if you need to really get a deeper insight about what's taking place now, because it's heavy, but you can make it light. And we got about a minute left within the call, and I definitely want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. I want to say thank you for Crystal to presenting that. I know Wes is probably back there quelling the children, which have been quite quiet. And I definitely want to say to everyone, we're building a lot right now, which is also why our shows are not, I think our shows are always layered, but you can see that the structure of our shows is somewhat changed right now because we're working a lot on the physical end to build many tools within the resistance and also connect to a lot more people. We have the community that is coming up. It has become physical, and we're just getting a little bit more finite on exactly that idea of how we're going to bring people in and how we're going to teach people what to do with their body, how to cleanse their body, and what's going on in the reality and how to utilize that in their benefit. Once again, I want to say wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and let Crystal say goodbye to everyone, and if Wes is maybe on, and we got about 10 seconds.
All right, yeah, wholeness and balance to everybody. I just wanted to give a quick memo there. On April 19th, Sevan will be back on the American Freedom Radio Show on the Truther Girls Show, specifically with Sonia, and he's going to go a little bit deeper into DMT and lucid dreaming, because if you didn't catch that show previously that just happened on Thursday there, Sevan got into some good things, but it was only about an hour long, so Sonia wants him back, and they're going to go into some deeper stuff there, so don't miss it. There will definitely be a post on the site about it. So take care, everybody.
Definitely. Also, if anyone is, because we did run over, and I saw one person had a question, if you are calling in and you know you didn't get disconnected and you can hear me, if you have a question now, you can press 1, and I can get that question answered. There's definitely no reason why, you know, if we're over here, we're still, and of course no one's hearing this and they won't hear it until the archive, but if someone does have a question and they're one of these 13 callers that are in here, if you press 1, then I can take your question now, because I saw the question thing light up for a moment, and maybe the individual thought that we wouldn't be able to get to their question. Okay, so it looks like that person may have gone off the line. Like I said, we got some amazing stuff going on. I'm just ready to get right into it. I really like today's conversation. Actually, that caller went ahead and pressed 1. Let's we're going to go ahead and bring him in. Caller from the area code 336. You are on the 2012 show. Wholeness.
Wholeness of vibration. This is Coach Mescales, resistant member of Double O Cosmos.
All right.
And I had a multi-question today. As we're talking about hyperdimensional careers, I have a question about spirits and choosing vessels. As in, I came up with another a dilemma about who can actually harness the Kundalini energy. And I'm trying to figure out, as a spirit, why would I choose a vessel that's not compatible for this solar system, like a lighter, non-melanated vessel? How is it possible as a spirit being to choose a non-melanated vessel? Or what is the non-melanated vessel really about?
Oh, okay, good question. Basically, what you're dealing with is melanated or non-melanated just has to do with the light or the spirit itself. So what ends up happening is that if you really start looking into the world, and you may have to turn your radio down because I can't hear like a reverb. And I'll give you just a moment to, okay, so I hear it's turned down. Okay, so basically what you're dealing with is that there's different kind of spirits. Like, you got to understand that if you look into the Pleiades and the 7 stars, what you'll see is that there's 7 emanations of color. So when the individual comes out, whether they're called black or white, because you can also call Chinese people non-melanated. So what ends up happening is that what the spectrum of light that their spirit is actually on is determining how much that penetrates the flesh to determine their overall color, or what we call melanated or non-melanated. So the difference is really the star system, or the first emanation of the star sector that they came from, that determines that, not so much as if they want to be one kind of individual or another kind of individual. Does that make sense?
Yes, because I was getting confused about people saying, white people going to spontaneously combust, and, all of the propaganda that's being said. I'm trying to get clarity on that,
Sure.
Because it's so, I don't know,
Well, I mean, what it is creative. The thing is that when you give certain individuals, I know many individuals that, what has happened is that they've had that opportunity several times to make their message universal. But what they chose to do is they chose to stay within one specific race. And let's say, for instance, with the black circles, for instance, and they say different things that, if you're spiritually conscious, you don't make those kind of remarks, such as you don't call another person a cracker or a racial term or anything like that, and then call yourself spiritual. So what happens is that, let's say, a year rolls by, and this faction is still introducing a lot of the Kemetan Egyptian knowledge and things of that nature, but their message has to continue to metamorphosize. So the hate part that has already existed, the part that they've chosen not to get rid of, also metamorphosizes into creative stories about white people not being able to handle the sun or spontaneously combusting, white people being basically clones themselves that come from Yaqub. Different stories that, whether they are true or not true, has not actually differed the reality at all, meaning that if it was true, then obviously some big chain reaction would have occurred because truth would have been found out. But when nothing has occurred, then it lets us have to look at it a lot deeper. And I looked a lot deeper into the melanations and Albion, or where Britain really is the Isles of Albion, and the star origin of the melanin dominant versus the melanin recessive. And so this is what I've been able to come back with. In addition to that, you have to understand that when the beings were blended, and this is also why when York talks a lot about fur, and he talks about certain kinds of ether of hair. When the beings were blended, of course, if you use a crocodile, which is highly melanated, it's within your DNA mixture of what you're making mass. Remember, these beings don't know how to create spirits. And they just understand how to make vessels or mass to put the spirits in. So when you make the vessel, if you're using, like I said, Sobek energy, melanated dark Naga energy, then the vessel is going to be dark. Now, the color of the soul is highly going to be determined by the radiation of the aura. The radiation of the aura is determined by the person's environment and experience. So that's why I say in the resistance, we don't have a concern with your skin color. We're more concerned with the color of your aura. Do you understand this? And the person, of course, says yes, but, you know, now they get the explanation of what that means.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get a clarity of, because I've heard so many things, Brother Sevan. And it's like I said, like you said, you can't be racist and saying you're spiritual, you know. And I've been hearing a lot of these so-called, and I was like, the only person I felt like could actually give me a non-biased answer was you about that, because, you know, I wanted to know how is that possible that, you know, people would be able to do that. You know, like how would one choose to come here like that?
Right. And, you know, humanity also has a situation with going really fast and then hitting something really hard. Like sometimes it's not good to go fast until you have your path straight, which is the other end of the motivites and different type of tektites, is you really don't want to mess around with meteorites unless you have your path straight, because they'll run you smack dab into the next situation that you have that's blocking your way, and you'll hit hard. So also the reality of this is so I would like to say, hold on real quick, man, I just really had something I also wanted to share, but it just kind of skipped my mind, so I guess I'm not going to be able to share it now, but if I do come back over it, I guess I'll blog or something about it. But there's just, again, a lot of information that's being released now about these different situations that we've been experiencing here on Earth, and the best thing to do is to take the instructions, take the lesson. We have, like I said, different kinds of people here that actually should work in our benefit. Like, I don't know why we would all want the same kind of person hanging around. Like, just straight clones across the board, like a planet full of beings that just look like grays. I don't think that would be very creative, which is also why I think that when you do get into an altered state of consciousness, you see these amazing fields, basically way beyond it's just baffling. You think it's you, because you know it's you to a certain level, but you understand that it's really the higher levels of the reality as they really are, not the rudimentary thoughts of what you think they are, and so that's what you're seeing. Like, notice how you can see a deeper beauty within certain people, especially if you're around them for a prolonged period of time. This means you cease to see them the same way someone who just met them does. You see what I mean? So this is why that's also the key to focusing, even in meditation, just looking at a point on the wall, because it does that on all your levels, from your physical, mental, spiritual, everything goes into a point. And then at that point, you basically have now, like, you told everyone to shut up, basically. You've told everything to, okay, everything's at attention, now we're focused, because we're about to do something. And so think about these step-by-step things, these commands that we have to give to the body in order to prep it for stages of even sleep. I noticed last night I had an exceptional night of sleep, and I was wondering, I just had so many dreams. I think I had like 30 dreams. And I was like, why did I have such a good night of sleep? And the only thing I can remember doing is last night I just had the first time for a long time the ability to just sit down there and think about a lot of the stuff. I had a couple crystals with me. I had a lapis lazuli and a pyrite slab and sodalite. And I think it may be an antenna. I'm still got to try it again tonight to see what happens. But I just had to, I take a lot of notes about these different things that cause exceptional. I was like hyperdimensional all the way. I at least went into 4 of my running characters. And what I mean by running characters is sometimes we have these dreams that we keep returning to. So it's like, notice it's the same environment, and it may be different on things, but what I noticed is, even though, of course, the same thing is not going on, I noticed that what the differences were is since you had been gone, basically. This is the things that occurred since the last time you looked through these eyes. Yeah. And I started to realize, like last night, I visited 4 of these different...
Hello?
Sevan, are you there? Oh, I think we may have disconnected from him briefly there.